My name is Ethan. I am a historian specializing in the Byzantine Empire. My life consists of dusty books, quiet archives, and lectures to students who are trying their best not to fall asleep. I married Cecilia Davenport. And marrying Cecilia is like marrying the entire Davenport dynasty, whose name is engraved on hospitals, university buildings, and I'm sure, a couple of benches in Central Park. I was there. Exotic acquisition. A guy from a simple family of teachers who somehow charmed their heiress. At family dinners in their mansion on Fifth Avenue, I was something of a living exhibit. Her father, Cornelius Davenport, the patriarch of the clan, liked to pat me on the shoulder and say loudly to the guests, "Here's our Ethan! He can tell you all about some place called Constantinople. Amazing, isn't it?" Cecilia loved me too, in her own way. She loved my simplicity, my unspoiled nature. She bought me expensive clothes that fit me like a saddle on a cow and laughed when I couldn't tell a fish fork from an oyster fork. These were small, almost imperceptible jabs that eventually turned into a constant dull ache. I was her project, her pet, but not her equal. The only bright spot in this deal with the devil was the Davenport Family Trust. Cecilia's late mother, a kind-hearted woman, insisted that the Davenport children's spouses receive a share of the trust. Not huge, but significant. It was her way of giving us independence. For me, this money was not a luxury, but a ticket to freedom, which I planned to use someday to open my own research institute. I thought it was just my secret dream. I had no idea that Cecilia and her father were already making completely different plans for my money. It all started with a headache. A migraine that struck me in the middle of another Davenport charity evening. I apologized and went upstairs to the library to find some aspirin and wait out the attack in silence. The library in the Davenport mansion is a cathedral of mahogany and leather. I found the first aid kit behind one of the bookshelves and was about to leave when I heard voices in Cornelius's adjoining study. The door was ajar. "He's becoming more and more absent-minded," Cecilia was saying. Her voice lacked its usual playfulness. It was cold and businesslike. "Last week he forgot his keys twice. And yesterday he spent half an hour looking for his glasses, which were on his head." "That's not enough," Cornelius replied. "We need more substantial evidence. Witness statements. Records. The judge won't declare a person incompetent on the basis of forgotten keys. To do that, we need to prove that the person is unable to understand the meaning of their actions or control them due to a serious mental disorder." My heart stopped. Incapacitated? They were talking about me. "Dr. Evans is already preparing his report," Cecilia continued. "He's recording all his complaints of fatigue and brain fog. I'm adding a mild sedative to his morning coffee. Nothing dangerous, but it increases forgetfulness and apathy. By the time of the annual family council, we will have enough material to raise the question of appointing me as his guardian." I leaned against the bookcase, feeling the floor slip away from under my feet. The headache instantly disappeared, replaced by icy horror. My fatigue, my distraction over the last few months. It wasn't me. It was her. She was poisoning me to steal my money. My future. My identity. As soon as I gained control of his share in the trust, we can put those funds toward the merger," Cornelius said. "Your late mother was too sentimental. Money should work for the family, not lie dead in some historian's accounts." I slipped out of the library as quietly as a mouse. I returned to the party, smiled at a couple of guests, and found Cecilia. "Honey, are you feeling better?" she asked, looking into my eyes with concern. "Yes," I replied, looking into her beautiful, deceitful face. "Much better." At that moment, I realized that the war had already begun. And I wasn't going to lose it. The next day, I became a different person. Outwardly, I remained the same, absent-minded Ethan. I continued to drink the morning coffee she served me, but now I only pretended to drink it, pouring it down the sink when she wasn't looking. Surprisingly, my migraines and brain fog began to disappear. My main weapon was my Invisibility. In the Devonport world, I was part of the furniture. No one paid any attention to me, and I began to take advantage of that. I bought several miniature, latest generation voice recorders. I attached one under the tabletop in Cornelius's office. Another in our bedroom with Cecilia, at the base of a heavy antique lamp. The third, the smallest, I always carried with me in my jacket pocket. I knew that the legality of secret recordings was a complex issue. But in many jurisdictions, the rule of one-party consent applies, meaning that I can record a conversation if I am a participant in it. This gave me the right to record my conversations with Cecilia and the doctor, and the recordings from the office. Well, that was a risk I was willing to take. And they began to arrive. I listened to the recordings every night, sitting in my small rented studio near the university, which I had rented under the pretext of working on a book. I listened to my wife and her father discussing the details of their plan. How they rehearsed their speeches for the family council. How they laughed at my naivety. He didn't even ask what vitamins I was giving him. Cecilia said in one of the recordings, and her laughter cut me like a knife. He just swallowed them like a good boy. The main thing is that he doesn't start to suspect anything. Cornelius replied. Keep writing in your diary about his oddities. Every time he forgets or mixes something up. We need a system. They were methodical. Ruthless. They didn't just want my money. They wanted to destroy me as a person, turn me into a helpless idiot in the eyes of the world to justify their theft. I listened to their conspiracies and realized that a direct attack would not work. The Devonport family was a fortress with the best lawyers money could buy. I had to be more subtle. Like a Byzantine strategist, I had to use their own strength against them. I made an appointment with Dr. Evans, a psychiatrist whom Cecilia had recommended to me. I went to see him and played my best role. I was confused, depressed, complaining of memory lapses and anxiety. It was a classic gaslighting tactic on their part, a form of psychological abuse in which the manipulator makes the victim doubt the adequacy of their own perception. My wife is very worried. I told him, staring at the floor. Sometimes I feel like I'm going crazy. Dr. Evans nodded sympathetically and made notes in his notebook. But my pocket recorder was recording every word he said, every leading question he asked. Then I took the second step. I found the best private investigator in town, a former FBI agent named Miss Robbins. I came to her with all my recordings. She listened to them silently, her face expressionless. This is monstrous, Mr. Carter, she said when the last recording ended. What do you want me to do? I need information, I replied. I want to know everything about Dr. Evans. About his finances, about his connections to the Devonport family. And I want you to look into the merger deal Cornelius mentioned. I want to know exactly where they're going to invest my money. A week later, Miss Robbins placed a folder in front of me. Its contents were explosive. Dr. Evans was up to his ears in debt. And 3 months ago, right after I became his patient, his wife's account received a large, anonymous transfer from one of the subsidiaries of Devonport Industries. The merger deal was even more interesting. Cornelius was going to buy out a rival company that was on the verge of bankruptcy. But he was going to do it through a front company at 3 times the price. He planned to pocket the difference. It wasn't just an unethical deal. It was fraud. And he was going to pull it off using money from the family trust, including my share. I had everything I needed in my hands. Now all that remained was to choose the time and place to strike. And I knew when and where it would happen. The annual Devonport Family Council. In 2 weeks. I was no longer a victim. I was the director. And I was preparing the premiere of my own play. First, I met with Anna Devonport, Cornelius' sister. Anna was the odd one out in the family. She was involved in charity work, lived modestly, and openly despised her brother's greed. She always treated me with warmth. We met in a quiet cafe. I didn't show her the notes. I simply told her about my suspicions. That Cecilia and Cornelius were trying to have me declared incompetent. She listened, her face growing increasingly somber. I always knew my brother was capable of many things, she said quietly. But this is monstrous. What are you going to do? I need your help on the board, I said. When the time comes, I'll need an ally in that room. She looked me in the eye and nodded. You'll have it. Then I prepared my materials. I made several copies of the most compromising audio recordings. I printed out the financial documents Miss Robbins had found, the money transfer to Dr. Evans, the fraudulent merger scheme. Each document was neatly arranged in folders. Each folder bore the name of one of the Trust's board members. At home, I continued to play my role. I was quiet, depressed, and forgetful. Cecilia watched me with poorly concealed triumph. She thought her plan was working perfectly. She saw me as a broken man. She didn't see that beneath the mask of weakness lay cold anger and a perfectly thought-out plan. On the morning before the board meeting, she brought me coffee. "Drink up, dear," she said with a gentle smile. "You need to be in good shape today." I took the cup, smiled back, and when she turned away, poured the contents into the ficus. "Of course, dear," I said. "Today is a very important day." The boardroom at the Devonport mansion was a place of power. A huge polished oak table, portraits of ancestors on the walls, heavy velvet curtains. All the key members of the family were seated at the table, Cornelius at the head, his sons, his sister Anna, and, of course, Cecilia next to me. Cornelius began the meeting. After discussing routine financial matters, he cleared his throat and put on a serious expression. "And now," he said, "we must move on to a delicate but very important matter. It concerns the health of one of our family members and, as a result, the security of the Trust's assets. Cecilia, please." Cecilia stood up. She looked magnificent in her strict business suit. She took out a folder, the very diary of my oddities. "It is with a heavy heart that I must report," she began, her voice trembling with feigned emotion, "that recently, the mental state of my husband, Ethan, has caused me serious concern. His absent-mindedness, memory lapses." She spoke, and I looked at her and felt nothing but a cold emptiness. "We also have the opinion of a respected specialist, Dr. Evans," Cornelius continued. "Excuse me," I said. My voice sounded unexpectedly loud in the ensuing silence. Everyone turned to look at me. "Before you continue, I would like you to listen to something. I think it will help you get a more complete picture." I took a small speaker out of my briefcase and pressed a button on my phone. Cecilia's voice came out of the speaker, clear and distinct. "I'm mixing a mild sedative into his morning coffee. By the time of the annual family council, we'll have enough material." Then Cornelius' voice rang out. "Money should work for the family, not lie dead in some historian's accounts." Cecilia's face turned into a mask of horror. Cornelius jumped up, his face reddening. "What is this? Where did you get this?" "This is called gathering evidence," I replied calmly. I stood up and placed a folder on the table in front of each member of the council. "And these are supporting materials. Here you will find information about how you, Cornelius, paid Dr. Evans for a false diagnosis, as well as a detailed outline of your merger fraud. You weren't just planning to steal from me. You were planning to steal from your own family foundation." The room fell silent, broken only by the rustling of pages. Anna Davenport looked at her brother with icy contempt. I looked at Cecilia. There was no longer any arrogance or pity in her eyes. Only fear. "You underestimated me," I said quietly, so that only she could hear. "You thought I only studied dead empires. But I know something about betrayal, conspiracies, and the fall of tyrants. That's part of history too." The consequences were like an earthquake that destroyed the facade of the Devonport dynasty. Cornelius was forced to resign as head of the foundation and the company under threat of criminal prosecution by the rest of the family, who were furious at his attempt to steal from them. His reputation was destroyed. Dr. Evans lost his license and was under investigation. Cecilia, she lost everything. The respect of her family, her status, her money. I filed for divorce the very next day. Our divorce proceedings were record-breakingly short. She didn't dare object to a single point. I got my share of the trust down to the last cent. I never saw them again. A year later, I was sitting in my own office. Outside the window was not Manhattan, but the quiet campus of a small university in New England. On the door hung a sign, the Ethan Carter Institute for Byzantine Studies. I used the money not for revenge, but for my dream. I created a place where people like me could work in peace, without worrying about money or bowing to the powerful. Sometimes, late at night, poring over ancient manuscripts, I remembered that life. Life in a gilded cage. And I realized that the most important story I had ever studied was my own. The story of how a quiet historian, whom everyone had written off, was able to destroy an entire empire. Not with armies and weapons, but with the truth. And it was a victory worthy of any Byzantine emperor.